it's Chris again with another Scottish Jeans Bites. I'm out and about near Stewarton, training for the Kilt Walk next month to raise money from Inlochran. And I thought with this particular Scottish Jeans Bites, what I might do is talk to you about censuses. Now, in a previous video that I recorded, I talked about the earliest census in Scotland, which was a thing called the Senachus Nalaban, recorded in the 7th century, which enumerated the folk of Dalriada, which is today Argyll, in the west of Scotland. And that was the Irish folk that came over with the Gaelic language and colonised Argyll in the 5th century. And this particular census that was originally recorded in the 7th century basically outlined the number of folk that there were who lived in various sort of tribal areas or clan territories, how many people could actually man a boat, in a time of war, that kind of thing, and also included some genealogies of the earliest Dalriadan kings, the earliest Scottish kings who came over from Ireland. But in terms of the modern census that we're talking about, it's really 1755 is when you get the first effort to try to carry out a census within the country, and that's an exercise that was carried out by the Reverend Webster. And the Reverend Webster census, which has been published, you can access it on a page on the National Records of Scotland website, essentially didn't record the names of individuals, but it did work out how many people lived within each parish within the country, and some additional information such as how many of them were Protestant and how many of them were Catholic or Papist, as the terminology of the day suggested. And it was a useful exercise to give an idea of how many people were around the country at that point. But it's not until 1801 that you get to the first, what's known as decennial census, the first of the censuses carried out every 10 years. And from 1801 to 1851, the census was actually organised centrally for Britain in London, including the Scottish censuses. And it's not until 1861 that the first census is actually run from Scotland itself for the country, after the creation of the General Register Office in 1854, which started the civil registration process from 1855. Now, the first few censuses, they aren't really that useful. From 1801 to 1831, they tend to be statistical in nature. You do find that in some parts of the country there are copies of lists of people who were recorded by the local enumerators, from which they then drew the statistical information. So, for example, in Orkney, there are lists from some parts of the islands from 1821, for example. But it's not until you get to 1841 that the modern decennial census starts to list individuals and to provide information about their ages and where they came from. Although the original census doesn't actually, the original 1841 census doesn't actually name the relationships of people towards the head of the household. That doesn't kick in until 1851. From 1851 onwards, you get the parish of origin, as opposed to just whether they were born in the country in which they were enumerated, or whether they were foreign or Irish or English, that sort of thing. So from 1851, you should get the name of the parish where individuals come from, and their occupations, their ages, and their relationship to the head of the household. Then it sort of evolves over time. Every 10 years, new questions come along. In 1891, they ask whether you can speak Gaelic or English, or Gaelic and English. In 1911, for example, you find that there's a question asked of women: how many years were they married, how many children did they have, and how many of those children were still alive. So the questions kind of change every time there's a census. But they are particularly useful to look at, to try to find family groupings, to see where individuals were every 10 years and how they progressed throughout their lives. Now, the only place you'll get the images online for the censuses in Scotland is the Scotland's People website. There are transcripts available on Ancestry, The Genealogist, Find My Past, My Heritage, and so on. But the problem with the transcripts is they're actually incomplete. So some information is actually missing from some of those census records. But beyond that, the records are available to look at online. Just bear in mind that there is information that's missing from the records if you're going to the transcripts. They don't ask things like how many rooms there are with one or more windows, for example. Some of that information can be quite useful from a social point of view. And things like, their medical status, whether people were dumb, deaf, or blind, those kind of questions that were asked, they've not been transcribed by the transcription services on Ancestry and so on. So Scotland's people where you really want to go to try and find these records. The Family Search Service also provides access to the censuses as well, if you're a member of the church, or if you can access one of the family history centres. That can be useful as well to help you with your research. Now, because there's a closure period, you can only access census records up to the last 100 years. So the most recent census for Scotland that's available online is the recently released 1921 census. There is one other thing you can access called the 1939 National Identity Register, but that's maybe a story for another time. That's something you have to apply for independently through the National Records of Scotland. So, as ever, I'm doing these wee videos to try to raise money to support An Lochran, which is the Gaelic Language Centre in Partick in Glasgow. And I'll be doing the Kilt Walk on the 28th of April to try and raise money, along with a team of people who we are known as the Gale Force. And we're out practicing at the moment to get ourselves fit for that. We're planning to do a walk around Cumbria in a couple of weeks' time and to train for that as well. So we're getting ourselves ready and in good gear. If you can support us, we'd be eternally grateful. And the link for the Just Given page for my Kilt Walk is available in the description for this video below. So I hope that wee discussion on censuses was of interest, and I'll come back to you again soon with another topic on another day. So thanks for now. Cheerio and Drasda, agus moran tang. Bye for now, and many thanks.